So I'm going to talk today about how you can create a world, a society without borders. Before I do that, let me specify what I mean by borders, because we've been talking about lots of different borders today. When I mean borders, I don't actually mean the little geographic lines on a map or geographic delineations. I mean the borders that stop human beings from moving around the world, which is something I know a lot about because, as Mike said, I've been traveling for years. I spent years on the road living out of a backpack. And I don't really like those kind of borders that much. I do like the kind of borders that delineate nations because, frankly, that question we asked at the beginning, where are you guys from? I love that question. It's my favorite question. And I just kind of think if we didn't have those and we asked that question and we said, where are you from? And I was like, Earth. Cool. Where are you from? Oh, I'm from Earth. Oh, it's cool. Where are you guys from? Yeah. So it's not as exciting. But I don't like the idea of being restricted in movement. So let me start. I'm going to tell you a couple of stories about why I think the ability to move around the world, travel, is how you can create a world without borders. I love to travel. I love adventure. Now, the reason I love it is because I get to go from the known into the unknown. And when I'm there in the unknown, I'm learning about that, but I'm also learning about myself, right? It's about growing. And the first story about this is when I first went to India for the first time, Kolkata, which is where I landed at midnight, and I got dropped off by the taxi at 1 o'clock in the morning, didn't know where I was going to stay. There's like one light in the whole city, I think, at night, and it's mostly pitch black. And I'm walking around trying to find a place to stay, and everybody's looking at me for way longer than people usually look at people in this part of the world. It's like this really long, why are you looking at me that long? You shouldn't look at me that long. It's getting uncomfortable. Everywhere I went, everything was dirty. There was pavement, there was dirt on the road. Everything was different. And I was a little bit scared. And then the hostel I ended up staying at was a hostel, supposedly, but it looked like a homeless shelter. And I slept with my backpack like this around, and it was uncomfortable. And then 4 days later, it was like I'd grown up in Kolkata. I was like, hey, namaskar, everybody. Hey, Kolkata, let's grab a taxi. I was comfortable there. So I went to the unknown, and it was scary because it was different. And then after a few days, it became comfortable. And as the place becomes comfortable, you start to notice different things. You start to notice not the differences, but the sameness. So maybe you go to Asia or China or Japan or something, and you're like, holy crap, you guys have McDonald's here? How do you eat a hamburger with chopsticks? Like all this ridiculous American impressions of a place. But you start to notice this stuff, and you feel more and more camaraderie and commonality. And it's an interesting experience when you travel, and the more places you go, the more you shift from seeing differences to sameness, from differences to sameness. And it starts to change you. And that's a big thing. I have a passport, but I don't want it. I wish that I could burn my passport because I don't feel like an American. I mean, I live here now, too. I don't feel like a Brit either. I just feel like a human being. And that's a big thing for me, right? So if everybody traveled as much as I did, why would we need borders? Nobody cares about nations. But there's another side to it. It's not just about me traveling and my experience. And I was in Egypt in 2006 with my girlfriend at the time, and we were traveling, and through some friends of friends, we met a family, an Egyptian family. And they took us out in the Nile, the father, his son, and his couple of daughters. And we had a big feast. It was kind of a little rickety boat with like a tree trunk as a mast and like a bed sheet as a sail. I mean, it was like, is this thing going to float? And then, we were hanging out all day. I had this big feast of oranges and bananas, really lovely. And throughout the day, we were talking with the family and laughing, trying to communicate because they didn't really speak much English. My girlfriend spoke a little bit of Arabic. And we were laughing about what was the same, what was different, the clothes, the way we spoke. And later that night, we went to their house, and they made us dinner. And it was really fun to try to explain what vegetarian meat meant. And then all the meat came out. It's like, well, actually, we guess we meant we used to be vegetarian because tonight we're just going to eat this. This wasn't working out, communicating. And I remember the way, how the girls were in the bedroom, but the guys couldn't go in there. And there's like all these different little things. And I remember there's a sink in the living room. And I remember washing my hands just before dinner. And the girls looking at me and chuckling and laughing. And I was like, what are they laughing at? And then they washed their hands, and they did it different. They kind of did it like this, where I did it like that. And they thought that was so funny. And then at dinner, during dinner, we were kind of talking. And then the girl who was about 14, and she had been really staring at me the whole day with those big brown eyes. It was like hypnotic. And then she said something in Arabic, and everybody went, "Ooh, it's quiet." And I was like, "Whoa, what happened? What'd she say?" And my girlfriend was like, "No, nothing." She's like, "Ooh, that was bad." And I was like, "Okay, well, what did she say?" And she said, "Well, if he's so nice, how can he be an American?" And people always laugh when I tell that story, and it's funny now, but when I was there in that moment, I was an American traveling in an Arabic country, and George Bush was in office, sending bombs into countries where people who talked like she did, and washed their hands like she did, and dressed like she did, and ate the foods like she did, were getting killed. And come to find out later, the reason she thought that at 14 was because her teacher told her that Americans were bad people. And so at that point, I knew that it was important for me to travel, not just so that I could grow, so that I could enter the unknown, but because I'm bringing the unknown to them, to other parts of the world. And it's this mixing, it happens both ways, and that reverberates and it spreads out. She's got stories to tell, right? She has an other way of looking at it now. So there's this idea that the way to bring the world together and have no borders and have people come together, you've probably heard this before, is for aliens to come from outer space, right? Not the aliens from Mexico, like in America, where they think everybody that's an immigrant is an alien. I mean like actual aliens from outer space. Come down and then all human beings go, "Oh my God, aliens, let's band together under a common purpose to protect ourselves from these aliens." And I was thinking, that kind of makes sense, but I don't know, let's not wait for, maybe like global warming could be a thing, like, just start burning up all the oil. Maybe we'll rush things forward. Maybe some common purpose, but I'm like, it just doesn't feel right. So I was just, what if instead of waiting for some big common purpose, we just started to continue, this is a key point, continue to recognize the commonality that we already have. To recognize what's common between us. And traveling does that. By mixing and moving around the world, you start to see what's the same between you and other people. You start to feel more like a human being than you do a Brit or an American or Ugandan or wherever your nationality is. And so I think that we're on a trajectory. I don't know if it's here, but I believe that we're going in the right direction. And I'm an optimist. I'm coming here with good news. I think that if things keep going the way they're going right now, we're going to be okay. I remember when I was driving from France to Germany, the first time I was living in a camper van, first time I'd crossed the border between European countries, and I remember I was with my girlfriend at the time again, and we were driving, and I slowed down, and I was like, what is that building? Is that the border? It was just this little building shack, boarded up, plywood and everything over the windows, and I remember distinctly slowing down, and I was like, the asphalt had cracks in it, and there was grass growing up through it. And I was like, that is so powerful. The idea of there being a border between these two countries is history. It's like so old that there's grass growing. And that for me, that said something. And now think about it. Think about how you compared to your parents think about yourself as a human being versus your nationality. And think about your grandparents. It's changing. And sometimes it's hard to see when you see the struggles and all the horrible stuff that's happening right now. Sometimes it's hard to see that we are moving in a great direction. And instead of us getting stressed out and having to change it now, world without borders today, what if we could be at peace with just being part of that movement? And what if we could just get excited about being on the journey and being like, wow, I could go out and I could be part of this today by talking to people in London. I mean, I live in this city because it's like traveling the world without moving. And you have the opportunity whenever you see somebody from a different language and they're your waiter or waitress at a restaurant, inquire, break that bubble, Be part of that. Go into the unknown. Open yourself up more. Open them up more. Mix. Travel the world. Take pictures. Tell stories. And not just physically either anymore. Go on the internet. Make friends from around the world. Continue to do what you're doing. And see the progress that you're having and the way your children will have and so on and so on. And I can't believe that if we continue on this path or even a little bit steeper one that in 100, 200, maybe even 500 years, that we can't not be friends with people all around the world. We can't not be doing business with people all around the world. We can't not be having so many things that are more common and the same for us that we just don't give a shit anymore about our borders. And then they become, something that's no more than just an idea worth having so you know where you are. like here in the East End of London. Thank you.